That's right. Once you raise your hand and they know you'll raise your
Yeah.
hand,
Yeah.
like they never let you put it down.
So I'm growing the beard so nobody will recognize me when I shave
No,
it.
it doesn't always work.
Rename myself here. How's everybody doing? Everybody have a good holiday?
Yeah, it's all good.
All good. I apologize that I didn't get my homework done in a more timely fashion. I was cranking away on it last night at late at night, but I got it done. Um, but probably not in enough time for you guys to really um, comb through it and create, you know, good lasting feedback this time. But I my goal in doing this was I was trying to show that we do have different we have different opinions within our group, and that's okay. Like it's okay for DPH to have a different view of this than I'm going to have. And there's validity in both arguments, and not even that they're arguments, they're just positions, and we just need to be able to find, how do we service both or all the entities that are involved here. Um, did everybody get a chance to go through it before the meeting?
I reviewed
Not
it this
not
morning. Yep.
not
Okay.
thoroughly from me. So I've only had a chance to open it up a few minutes ago. But
Matt, are
And
you
I,
suggesting that we're looking at like one or two options? We're going to pick, option A, one or two, or are you trying to put all these parts and pieces together? What are your thoughts on it? I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you were trying to do.
My thought is we want to forward. I mean, unless there's some of the recommendations or language that we completely disagree with, I'm in favor of forwarding the whole thing to the full group for their consideration.
yeah, I mean, I think that we put it out there, and we put it out there with all the ugly. Like, leave it out there with the dissension. Leave it out there with, hey, we're never all going to agree, but like, at the end of the day, we have to find the best path that we can support. And there's still going to be some that, hey, we go to the final product and we say, a good portion of the people felt this way, but there was still some outlier. So I think we just have to take the time to make sure that the discussion creates the validity for all the points. Jim?
Good morning, everyone. Um, I think the dividing line that we have here is the wish list versus the legislative, no rules and regulations. And Adam has kindly always guided us and gave us information about, you know, this is, this is not a legislative issue. This is more of an internal issue. But at what at what point do we try to merge our wish list and the reality of what Adam provides us, or do we just throw out and send this out as a wish list? I think I would be more comfortable if we can provide the wish list with a little reality uh, under the guidance that Adam has provided us.
Yeah. Do we want to go item by item since we only have 5 items? Do we just want to start, item by item? And I'll try to make I'm going to hit track changes on this document that I have so I can try to capture some of it as we go. Um,
Yeah,
or make
let's try to crank through.
yeah.
Matt, before we start on this, do we have an idea of what the next stage is here? Like this our stuff gets sent up to the group, and then what happens with the big group? I don't know if you've had that discussion with Jim or anybody else yet,
I
but
don't.
I'm just trying to
I
get a vision
haven't
of the
had that
next steps.
discussion yet. I think that John and I think that the co-chairs of the large group are going to have to then give us direction. And they'll probably come up with a subgroup, including them and some other people, in order to pull them all these things together and then make sure we fill in the holes. And I'm hoping that happens in the next couple weeks. Like that's kind of what has to happen is they have to create a master document that says, this is what we were chartered to do. This is our answer to that charter. And here's some ancillary things that we thought of too. But that's, I think that's the process. But I think we're running up on limited time. John, correct me if I'm wrong, but we only have probably 3 more weeks before this has to
Yeah,
be done.
it's basically the report needs to be delivered by the end of January, I believe.
So
yeah.
So,
So yeah, to get our stuff done, we've got like, I don't know, 10 days or something like that, and then the full group has to review all the recommendations.
and our recommendations have to survive the scrutiny of the larger group, which is a dichotomy of what we have and just expands. Jim, what do you got?
Per that PowerPoint presentation dated October 1st, December is supposed to develop an outline of recommendations and assign writing duties. So I think we have met that requirement. Phase 3, January 2026, draft report, circulate for revisions and final vote and concessions. February 1st, final report with the appropriate legislative committee. So that is our outline based on that October 1st PowerPoint presentation. I don't know if the co-chairs have altered that, but per that document, we need to have the draft report ready to go in January.
Yeah, and I think we're getting very close to that. Our last conversation is a whole group. I think I have to find my notes, but I think next Wednesday we're meeting, correct? As the whole group, and I think that we're supposed to have final vetted. They're supposed to send out. Everybody's supposed to send out this version of their own stuff this week, so we can get a chance to look at it prior to the big group. So like as soon as when we get done with this, we're still going to put a big watermark on it that says draft, but we're going to send it to Jim and the group and say, okay, here's where we are right now. And then Jim, John, and who's the other? Sonia? Is she the other chair? The three of them have to lead us. So
Matt, just one comment on the scheduling. I think we talked at the last full meeting that the next full meeting is going to be on the 14th.
that's
But
right.
we were going to try to get a draft the week before of the recommendations from the other committees so that if we needed to incorporate something into our process and funding, we'd have a few days before the 14th to get that, I believe. So I don't think we have a meeting on the 7th.
Okay, you're right. I do recall that we had that gap week, which actually, every time we're involved with a large group, I think about we're doing well on our schedule, but they're going to throw us a big chunk at us that says, hey, now we have to talk about this. And we've kind of been in a holding position on a lot of that until they tell us what they want to do. So can we, you want to just go through this? Can you guys hear this if I push this button?
No.
You can't hear that?
No.
All right.
What was it supposed to sound like?
It's the AI reading it out loud.
Oh. No.
All right. Just everybody, if you haven't had a chance, look at the issue. Did I rephrase the issue better this time.
I, at least on an initial read through, I would take out regulation from there. I don't think the correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I don't think the code advisory committee normally looks at the regs. It's just the technical standards.
It right now it is the code advisory doesn't look at the regs, but that's
Yeah.
the issue. I think it should.
Well, yeah, I'm just saying based on the way it's phrased, it makes it sound like it's currently looking at the regs.
Reviews. Changes to. Go ahead, Jim.
You're on mute, Jim.
Matt Paulus, that years ago when they revised B100A, was that done at the state level, or did the code advisory committee have input into that revisions of expanding B100A?
Yeah, that's a good question. That was just before my time. So that was like, I think that was 2000 or 1999.
Right.
So it was just before I started with the program. So unfortunately, I don't know, but I mean, those were regulations. But I would imagine that there was some type of consultation. Well, actually, I don't know, because the regulatory review process obviously is significantly different. I think that's why a lot of people were upset when, that they were expecting a similar process to the technical standards, and that's just not the way it is. It's a very formalized, specific process, and so I can't speak for that. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer for you on that.
And I can't see how the DPH would not reach out to the code advisory committee for any input in the changes of, in B101 or B103, even though that is a public health code and those regulations have to be approved by the legislators. But it just feels kind of weird that they wouldn't reach down to the code advisory and just
I'm sure they did.
Advisory just for the
yeah. When we circulated the regs, it wasn't officially through the code advisory committee, but our stakeholder engagement included representatives of all the groups that are on the code advisory committee.
Yes.
Yeah, Matt, to be honest with you, I'm still a little bit confused by what parts go into the regulations and what goes into the technical standards. So that may just be one of the things that should be in our recommendation, is some clarity on how those two parts interact. Because if I'm not clear about it, I can't imagine most of the public understands how things get changed in one versus the other and how they interact with each other.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good point. The only thing I'll just mention is here, the concept of it was that the technical standards, realizing that, technology changes and products changes, that it wasn't felt that, a new product was something they needed to visit on the legislators for approval. So they needed a streamlined process for that. But the technical standards, it has evolved to a little bit beyond that. And so, but for the most part, I think the regulations, just think of that's the structural element of it, sort of the bones of it, and then the details of that is sort of outlined in the technical standards. And I mean, it's been like that for 30, 40 years. And the process is actually historically has been fairly efficient. I mean, at least that's the feedback we've gotten all these years. One thing I will say, though, is we have over the past 3 or 4 years become much more formalized with it as opposed to the last 30 years. The only thing I would say is typically, though, guys, is that we don't always have a change because it's just not needed some years. So as far as like having meetings at certain dates, that historically did not happen because it was thought that there was no need for it. Like there was no, usually somebody would bring something up from the committee, and that was necessary to facilitate some type of change. And then we would say, okay, we need to have a meeting, and then possibly this year we'll make some changes. Just something to keep in mind.
So Matt, if I could just ask a follow-up, obviously we'd prefer not to go to the legislature with any kind of regulation changes unless they're significant. So if we're going to have a more, I don't know, what is it, regular, the Codes and Advisory Committee giving it a little more teeth. I guess that's the best way to put it. Would that be something where we would bring a proposal to them, whether it comes from the public, the private sector, or from you guys, and say, hey, we'd like to make this change, or we're looking into this, and is this something that should be done through the technical standards, or does it require a regulation change that we need to go to legislature with, or do we have the authority to do it internally? I mean, I'm trying to think of the overall process between
Sure.
two different entities.
Yeah, okay, let me go through that. So I think the best way to do that, that's most transparent, and I think historically this is probably how it happened, was people within the stakeholders would probably consult with us meaning DPH, and bring it up as a topic within the realm of the Code Advisory Committee. And then at that time, during those discussions, it could be determined whether it required regulatory change or it's something that we could handle within the structure of the technical standards. I mean, technical standards, like I said, has evolved to the point where it does have fairly substantive changes that can be made without going through legislative approval, and that can be helpful in many cases. But other people can have a problem with that. But again, the good news is historically that has not been an issue.
It depends on exactly what the ask is too, as Matt indicated, they'd review, can this be, say there's a new technology that comes along, that may be something you just do in the technical standards. But if it's something that, conflicts with something that's in the existing regs or statute, that would be another issue.
Yeah, if we strengthen the Code Advisory Committee, I would much prefer to just keep it internal and not get into regulations unless it's significant. It's a much better process, and it's not something that takes 2 years, and it doesn't get political and all those other things.
Well, I think that when you have something like the Code and Standards Committee from the building department, it is thoroughly beaten with a stick. It is vetted, revetted. It has been looked at from all the different stakeholders, from all the different angles. And then when that recommendation comes out of that body, it's a unified voice, and it's easier to enforce. It's easier to train to. It's easier to implement because of the stringent vetting that's received and the buy-in that it has. Once you have industry buy-in, then it's a lot easier to enforce that new standard.
Yeah, one thing that I have observed over the past 2 to 3 years is participation has been abysmal. And I've been very disappointed on several times when we tried to vet these things. And I understand it because, I mean, these, just like this committee, it takes up all of our time. This is all voluntary stuff. Everyone's got to make money and do things. And it's hard. And maybe what, Matt Gilchrist is basically saying is, through the the building code changes, those are more, it's like a requirement, but I don't know if we need that necessarily, other than just to stress that these organizations need that type of participation. Because again, it was very disappointing, and I can give you a number of issues that we had. And I think I gave you an example the last time about one of the changes we made to the technical standards regarding this riser requirement. And we really wanted basically putting like a safety device in a riser, which is this structure to access a septic tank. And, we'd put this thing in there. It was called a secondary safety device. It's sort of like netting in there. Anyway, long story short, we vetted it through the committee, and we really wanted to see what the licensed installers had to say about it, and pumpers. and then come to find out that there were some technical issues that they should have said before we made those changes. And we had already put that in the code. And that, again, was part of my frustration that we did get the feedback we needed. And, that organization should have stepped up and said, because we rely on them. We're not doing this on a day-to-day basis, meaning a DPH. We're not out in the field installing risers and things like that. So we do need that participation. I think that needs to be like stressed to these committee members. And I think one of the things we did, guys, was to try to make that better. The last time we did like these questionnaires, and we kind of forced you to give an answer, because see, no answer is indeed an answer, but it wasn't perceived that way. So when you have a formalized thing, by saying you're not saying anything, basically by default, you're agreeing with it. And so we wanted to have a more formalized process with that, which sort of said, if you didn't have a comment on this particular topic, that means you were tacitly endorsing it. Which sounds like, why would you need that? But it's important, because then it just shows that everybody at least had a look at it, and they can't come back and say, hey, we didn't know about this. No, you did. You just chose not to, opine on the issue.
Right. So help me here. What am I supposed to be capturing here? How do we want to modify this? What is this missing to get there? Or do we want to just say, hey, you got this thing out so late, Gilchrist, we need a week to kick it around, and we don't necessarily need to go through it right now.
At least personally, I'm going to need a little bit more time to review and think this through. Like I said, unfortunately, I only had a chance to open this about 10 minutes before the meeting started. So, thank you for putting this together, Matt, by the way. I know this is a lot of work. But I'm sure I'll have some additional comments. I'll get an interface with Matt Pollock and some other people here too, to see if they have anything else.
Could I mention,
well.
there is something that I did hone in on there on one of the things, and I saw the word lobbying, and actually I'm going to throw in another word, a conflict of interest. That's the thing that we have to be careful with these committees. If you had them have a process or a vote, I guess, that's more powerful than ultimately DPH makes the final decision, because there is some troubles to that. I won't get into any specifics on that, but I have sort of seen that evolve over the years. So in other words, I'll just give you an example. You could have somebody that manufactures a particular product that's on this committee and could be making decisions that could basically give their product an unfair advantage, and they could be using this, and that's a very real thing. And so that's just one example of something that, as far as getting these committee members where they have too much power other than just basically as an advisory capacity, that would be one of my concerns, that individuals can use this to make an unfair advantage, on this committee, if they had something that was more powerful than just an advisory capacity.
And I agree. I agree with that. To the extent that if those people are not properly vetted, like with the DAS Code and Standards Committee, the Building Code and Standards Committee, like, Johnny Carrier is a builder. Like, he's looking at it like, hey, this is just going to cost me more money. But he's also looking at it, okay, is there a valid health and safety requirement here? Is there a valid, protect the, durability and protection issue? So he's looking at it through both things, because he's a reputable, honest man of character. So we would just have to make sure that we vet it properly. Yeah, you don't want somebody on there that has their new product and they're just going to plug the technical standards and regulations that are going to support that technology and that standard. Whereas, you want somebody to look at the greater good for the organization. I mean, the industry. You want somebody who, they might do standards, they might do regular septics all the time, but we need to look at advanced technology, and that has to be part of the mandate. So I get it. And I'm looking for where I have lobbying in there because I want to add the conflict of interest. So if you can tell me what sentence, oh, I just found it.
So did I.
Increased risk of bureaucracy or lobbying. I'm just gonna put / conflict of interest. I can wordsmith it better.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll just give it one more quick expansion on that. So we have there's a number of proprietary leaching products that are approved in the state of Connecticut. Probably more. Actually, I'll just give a plug to the state of Connecticut in general because of our formula that we came up with many years ago. This is before my time for how we credit these things. It actually fostered innovation to the extent that there are leaching products that basically were born here in the state of Connecticut that are now used all over, not only all over the country, but all over the world. So it's kind of a cool little fun fact that not everybody's realized. Again, and so our crediting is somewhat unique in that it looks at certain things. I won't get too technical. That then it fostered an innovation or an incentive to actually come up with these unique designs that now are used all over the country. But that being said, there's a lot of competition now with amongst these folks, and that formula that we had is actually quite outdated, and it probably needs to be tweaked. And, if you have individuals asking for certain things about that formula that then can give them an unfair advantage and things like that. So those are the things in the back of my mind that gives me a little pause if we had people on this committee that could have influence that could change that. And then we're kind of caught in the middle. And oftentimes these particular leaching products, proprietary folks are very litigious with one another and that kind of thing. And we certainly do not want to get involved in any of that kind of fight. So those are the things that are on my radar screen when it comes to, committee members and specifically what type of power these committee members have on the
They can't be
organization.
picking winners and picking losers.
Yeah, it's tough. But somebody generic and I know Carrier. Actually, his sister works for DPH. I don't know if you knew, or maybe it's her cousin. He's a really good guy. But I mean, he's a generic. He's just a home builder, but he doesn't really have a particular. Maybe he does. I don't know, like a particular product that's approved in the building code. Building code, I don't think has that kind of thing. So that's a little bit different for us. We have specific products that are approved. And they're approved and credited a certain way that committee members have an influence over. And if they have any attachment to those products, I mean, you could even have, and I'll even say this, I think over the years, I've seen engineers use particular leaching products. And in the back of my mind, maybe unusually so, maybe, some people obviously have a preference for things, but I think that maybe they had a relationship and you can read between the lines with these products and they're kind of pushing them because of this relationship they had. So those are things that get me pause if that engineer now is on this committee and then, sort of cheerleading for this particular product.
I can see that. I can see that concern. Jim?
I would just like to suggest for the remaining time, maybe we just focus on item number 1 and maybe try to come to consensus of agreement so we can cross that off our list, i.e. Do we take out regulations and just leave item number 1 solely for the code advisory committee, and item number 2 would be, should we come up with an administrative list of what the new code advisory members are going to be? I mean, Matt was saying that maybe the building code committee is a little more rigid, and we don't need to be that rigid. So maybe we can be a little productive in item number 1 today before we end.
Okay, Bob?
Yeah, thanks, Matt. Just to comment on Matt's stuff. I don't know exactly how the Codes and Standards Committee does it, but I have not heard those conflicts. I think everybody's going to probably just sign some sort of acknowledgement of their fiduciary responsibilities, for being involved on that Codes and Standards Committee. They'd have to exclude themselves if their own product was being reviewed, something to that effect. I think on the building code side of things, it's typically more of a national thing where politics get involved. A manufacturer wants to put something in that's going to be used across the country. It's rare that somebody's coming to Connecticut and says we want to get this product in just a Connecticut code. So I can see where there was a little difference there, but we'd have to be a little cautious of that. But I have not heard of that being abused on codes and standards. So hopefully we can figure out a way to make sure that doesn't happen. But I do agree with you, Matt, that we don't want someone coming in there and doing something that's self-serving.
Yeah, and just
Maybe
one other,
something.
yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, Adam.
I was just saying, it sounds like it's maybe something we need to research more with DAS about how they deal with conflict of interest there. I know how we deal with conflict of interest here with our other boards is that we do run. Um, for instance, we have a pending reg on retired physicians. We will consult with members of the medical board, but ultimately the commissioner is a decision maker on that. Any changes that affects a particular profession we have a board with, we touch base with them, but ultimately the decision making is with the commissioner to thoroughly insulate from any conflicts of interest. Sorry, Matt.
No, and that's the
Yeah.
current structure right now. That's why it's not really an issue because
Mhm.
we have the ultimate say. So if we feel that that's an issue, we can just just push that aside. So yes, an agreement there. That's why if we wanted to change that structure where these members have more of a voting power and things like that, that's going to become more of an issue. That's the concern.
And I think
Yeah, I
with
think
the Code and Standards Committee, they do have some conflicts of interest. And one of the conflicts of interest that I can tell you is fire safety. There is a very huge fire safety lobby and fire safety products, and they're represented on the Building Code and Standards Committee. And it's up to the rest of the committee to be able to separate the self-promotion from the actual problem. And like, I mean, we know that our legislators are conflicted, in how they make laws. Like there's always going to be a some kind of conflict of interest. I mean, I'm sitting here right now today. Technically, I have a conflict of interest. I want to make sure that I'm building homes as affordably as possible, and I want to make sure that the systems that go into my houses, one, meet my needs and standards for my customers, but I want to protect my cost and my baseline and make sure that I have as much flexibility in choosing products that I can have in designing houses and systems. So, I mean,
yeah, I mean, I
there's
think
a fine line between conflict of interest and interest.
yeah, I think what we have here is like broadly members of this committee are interested in their representing an industry broadly. If there was something like a decision-making power that would personally enrich somebody, like I have product A, and I'm saying that the tech standards should, product A is the thing you should buy, and that should be in the tech standard. That would be a direct conflict of interest. While saying, well, if broadly writ large, you're like, this is a good septic. These 3 or 4 things are a good septic design. That's a different thing. But yeah, I'd be interested to find out more about how DAS does deal with those, especially if you're saying there's some people that directly sell particular fire safety items. But I think another thing, going back a little bit ago, another thing Matt was saying was ensuring participation on these two would be important. We're looking for as broad as interest as possible. But if participation's been a problem in its current format, I'm not sure how this would necessarily solve that. Or if it would just cause more problems because the technical standards couldn't do anything unless you have a certain number. If it becomes, the code advisory committee becomes a body where you need a certain number of people to vote to adopt the technical standards, and we don't have the participation to reach that. Well, having it now where it's ultimately the commissioner that adopts technical standards, it provides allows the technical standards to still move forward, even if there isn't full participation of the committee. I know DAS, I'm not sure how they get full participation of the code and standards. I do know they have some staff member time that's dedicated to code and standards committee. I did check in with them, and they said they have some people, they have a few staff members that work on it.
On your current code advisory committee, are those appointed positions to an individual? Like, or is it, hey, can we get a representative from the builders group? Can we get a representative from, the installers association? Can we get a representative from the engineers? Like, is it an ad hoc committee, or is it an appointed position that you sign up for 3 years?
I can answer that question. So
Yeah.
that has evolved in the last few years. And so what the understanding is now, we have specific stakeholders that we list. So representatives from these organizations, and these organizations are expected to provide us. I think we asked for 2 individuals, so a primary and then a backup, to represent their organizations. And the expectation is that these individuals are supposed to be taking notes and taking this information back to their respective groups for discussion. And then they're supposed to come. Now whether that's working or not, that's debatable. And I think, again, we don't have participation. I just want to mention one thing, though, too, is I'd like to maybe just put something in here about the usage of technology, because I'm coming up with things in my head of what I'd like to see. So currently, right now on our website, we do mention, and we do put things about the code advisory. We'll put usually an agenda and when these are going to occur. But I'm thinking perhaps something in the future, and just brainstorming right now, is have some way where stakeholders can actually upload things that they wish to have discussion, and perhaps maybe have something where everyone can view it and even discuss and online or whatever. I don't know. I'm just, like I said, I'm just brainstorming to try to make this so it's easier for individuals to bring up, not individuals, I'm saying the organizations to bring up specific topics, and to even have online discussions or have that information online, and then everyone can go back and forth and have a discussion that way at their own convenience. So I'm just thinking, again, try to use technology to increase participation, making it more accessible for people, mindful of the fact that, people have jobs and they're trying to make money on these committees. And so, they may have to look at these things after hours. And if it's on this type of forum thing where they can do that, that might help.
Yeah, then, that may be a good way to get increased feedback and participation. But if you formalized it more, then it made this a voting body in statute, you wouldn't be able to do that, because then those type of forums would be ruled an illegal public meeting.
Okay.
Having it being an informal advisory group, I don't think those type of forums would have the I might want to double check this with a lawyer, but I don't think those type of forums would have quite the same rules around public meeting requirements that the formal setup would be required to have.
So I want to circle back to how that current code advisory committee is created. So you've identified stakeholders, the Home Builders and Remodelers Association, that's one stakeholder. The Independent Contractors of Septic Systems America is another stakeholder. I'm making stuff up. But like, so these are the stakeholders. The Association of Sanitariums is a stakeholder.
Mhm.
And those are the members of the committee, and then they send their delegate. The
Mhm.
difference with the Building Code and Standards Committee is like Johnny Carrier sits on that as Johnny Carrier. The state asks us, hey, do you guys have anybody who would like to do this? And we give them a couple names. And then they interview them, they vet them, and then they put them on this organization. And that person is responsible. No longer the Home Builders and Remodelers Association. Johnny's not wearing a hat that represents the HBRA. He is there as a member of the Building Code and Standards Committee. So he, like, I don't know if they take an oath, but I know they get like sworn in, and they take their seat on that committee. And that seat has a term limit. And then they have to either reapply for that seat. And I think they can only do it for so many times in a row. You can only be the chairman for so many times in a row. So the fact that those people are now public servants, they're volunteer public servants, but they're public servants all the same, and they have a fiduciary responsibility to the entity that is the Building Code and Standards Committee. That creates the legitimacy, one, for the committee, but it also creates a little bit of a protection against graft and self-promoting behaviors where they all have to chime in on these issues, and because now you're there as an individual and not just a conduit for the voice of a larger group of people, there's a personal responsibility to that organization. So, and that's why I like it. I like it because you find the people who are going to give you that requested amount of effort. You're going to say, if you're going to do this, we need you to do this. So current code and standards, like I've asked Jim, I'm like, so who's our current person? And I'm like, we don't really have one. Bob's sat on it, or he's sat on it, or, I think so-and-so showed up to a meeting, but we don't even know. And we might be filling the seat because in a pinch, we have to get you somebody. But I would rather make a recommendation or a few recommendations and say, hey, these are 3 people from our organization that might really do the job well. Why don't you talk to them and appoint the ones that you want? That's kind of how it actually happens. Bob, did I paraphrase that correctly? Because you've been doing this a lot longer than me, but.
Yeah, I think that's correct. And I think when it's a voting body and it has a little more authority, I think there's probably a little better commitment than there's an advisory committee. I'm kind of busy this week, and I'm not going to go to the meeting because it's just, I don't know if you guys are going to listen to what I have to say or not anyway, but if it's a voting position, I'm expected to show up there, and I'm representing the organization, or I'm representing the industry or whatever it is, that you're going to have a commitment that's different than just sort of an ad hoc thing that maybe I'll show up or not.
And you're representing yourself. Like,
Yeah.
Well, the other thing just to keep in mind, guys, is it's like everything in life, there's a series of trade-offs. I think that a more formalized process, and I think Adam alluded to this a minute ago, is going to have certain things and maybe stringencies where you're going to limit how you can interact and do things. So we have to think about that a little bit. Whereas right now, having an advisory committee, there's some benefits to that in terms of being able to operate more openly, I think, and less strict. But then on the other hand, like you just said, Bob, then that has better participation because you're a voting member and things like that. So just food for thought. There's going to be a trade-off here. This is never going to be perfect. You got to figure which method is going to be better for you. Something more stringent that's going to have more guardrails on it. Something that's less stringent, that's more open, but it's going to allow probably more fluid discussions. I don't know.
I think the caliber person and the level of dedication to a more stringent program is going to behoove the industry. But I mean, I'm an ex-military guy, and I'm all about structure and guardrails. So
Appreciate that.
you know, I think that we have 15 minutes, and I don't think we're going to be able to, as much, Jim, as I wish we could like knock out number one and get it done. I don't think it's going to happen until everybody takes this home and chews on it. So I think we have to take it home and chew on it. But the one thing that I'd like to ask before my computer dies and I plug it in quickly, the one thing I like to ask is, are these 5 things here still what we want to be working on? Can we kind of start with that? So like the vetting and communication of subsurface sewer disposal system requirements. This is the issue that we talk about, the code and standards or the code advisory group. It's a great debate, and this section keeps getting longer and longer. And I'm sure after I get more feedback from everybody, it'll even be longer. The second is the environmental engineering program capacity and focus. You know, I still have some of your comments in here. I don't know why I didn't get those out. Wait, do I have the right one up?
Yeah, I believe so.
Is this the
Yeah,
one
you
I
have the
vetted
one
last?
you circulated on us, but yeah, I was gonna, if we got there, I was gonna ask, I didn't notice any changes that,
Yeah,
and
I gotta pull up the
that
other
on
one.
number 2. Yeah.
I gotta pull up the one that
Um,
I circulated. So hold on one second.
I didn't know it. At least the one you circulated, I didn't notice any changes in number 2 in my first read through, and we still had the comments in there. I know we discussed changing the unable to fully satisfy customer needs section at the last meeting. Couple things, so I didn't.
Yeah, I agree, Adam. You had some comments, and I think Miriam had some comments on that, and I had actually some suggestions on that when we get to number 2.
Yeah, so I didn't know if
I'm
there was
afraid
another
that
version floating around with the changes, or if the changes were just in section 1, or item number 1.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen for 2 seconds. And I'm gonna find the right document.
Yes, some of those comments are the same, even though they're different. On the draft 2, where it says comment AS1, that was comment AS11. So on draft policy number 2, the last five comments by Adam and Miriam are still the same.
Oh yeah, you're right. So I have the right document. I just didn't delete the original version until just now. So let me
Oh, so the second
go back
part.
to sharing my screen. Yeah, I apologize there.
Okay, yeah.
It
Yeah,
was
I see it
late.
now.
I didn't do a good job.
Yeah.
Yep. So that everything I just deleted there is the first. Then I restate it here and incorporate everybody's stuff. So the environmental engineering program BPH is operating at full capacity, expanding mandate to reviews. We added the 7,500 gallons. And then I have this asterisk in here where we say the environmental engineering program is not a legislative program, but rather an internal organization arrangement established by DPH. Legislature does not dictate departmental structure. So I wanted to call that out. I struggled with how to talk about this issue without using the EEP, format. So I just said, hey, how DPH structures themselves is one thing, but we're asking for whoever it is in whatever group it is to be more focused and have less noise, and be more dedicated to this mission area and less distracted by other things like public pools and family campgrounds. That's what our ask is.
Matt, could you change the 7,500 to 10,000? I think that's what you meant to say, because that's what's currently before us. It's supposed to be 10,000. It's 7,500 right now.
Sorry, late
No
at
problem.
night.
No worries.
I wasn't drinking though. I was.
Mhm. I wouldn't hold it against you.
There you go.
The holiday season.
That's
Yes.
it. All right. So this is still a valid requirement. I'll get rid of all the other noise. I've incorporated those comments into the discussion. And you guys can review this together on your own time, and we'll get to the right place. And then number 3, education and training of subsurface wastewater disposal professionals. Again, I took the focus of our intent. I included DPH questioned if the professional education is a responsibility that falls on the state. Many other professionals require continuing education, yet these requirements are typically neither provided nor funded by the state. We go on through here. And then in the recommendation, I kind of changed our recommendation to be more, the Code and Advisory Committee will say, and DPH will say, these are the things we need you educated on, because we're changing these technical standards, or we're changing these regulations. This is what we need you guys to be educated on. And this is the curriculum that you should be training to, or here is the framework for the curriculum you should be training to. And then pushing that out to, other organizations to actually do the training. The funding would then allow for, one, the creation of the curriculum, and then 2, would allow for both local and state professionals to attend the training, to benefit from it as much as the engineers and installers in the field.
Yeah, Matt, one just real minor comment. Up in the section on discussion, right at the end of that, you have the word staff. Second to the last line in the first paragraph, sorry. Ensuring that staff are prepared to adopt the policies, right at the end of
Yeah.
that. And I think it should say, all participants, not just staff, or, something more inclusive of everyone involved in the process. Thank you. That'd be great.
So, kick this around, make sure it makes sense, make sure this is kind of where we want to go. It's again fostering that partnership between local, state, and private industry, and putting the requirement for training the private industry on the private industry, and then providing funding to allow for the creation of what training they need, and then 2, allowing the state and local people to attend that training, and participate on that level. 4, timeliness and consistency in the review process. This is where we talked about the 20 days. We changed the 2 days from request to start the inspection. We didn't say that the inspection had to get done in 2 days, because of the size of the product and all that. The inspection might take longer, per Jim's comment. There was a little bit less comment on this one, but I did clear up that this does not stipulate approval in 20 days, but rather the completion of the review in 20 days to keep the process moving. That was Adam's, biggest hurdle on this first time around. So if we can take a look at this one again and vet it and see, this is also where we call for some kind of exchange, where locals can farm out work to each other, through MOUs and that kind of stuff, in order to cut down on the review time and make sure that we're operating more quickly. So
Matt,
kick it around.
Matt, if
Go
I
ahead.
could, just 2 quick comments there. Under the recommendation, the second paragraph, implement a work sharing system among maybe local health districts. And I think we're maybe going to have to put something in here to clarify. You talk about the work share program, that we've all been talking about, but no one's going to know what we're talking about there. So I think we need to put a little more meat on the bones there so people understand what it is we're suggesting they try to do. And that's towards the end of that paragraph where it says, work sharing, about the third line from the bottom.
I can assist with that. So really what you want to reference is phase 1 and phase 2 certified individuals, okay? Because those are the people that are able to legally conduct this work. They have the qualifications to do that. That's actually going to be changing the title for it, but we'll just keep it. That's what people reading this now will understand exactly what that means. Those are basically sanitarians that have gone through our training and an examination through DPH that are deemed qualified to perform these different duties like plan reviews and inspections and things like that.
Yeah, I think we're all on board on that, but I see a legislator looking at this going, what are you talking about, this work share thing? I don't even know what you guys are even
Yeah.
talking about.
Agreed. Although I
Got
think
rid of moonlighting.
yeah, I think that's a really a potentially good thing because I mean every jurisdiction, they have budgets and things like that, and it varies and even workloads. I mean, you got Fairfield County that's humming through recessions and everything else. It's almost, at least it seems to me, that building continues even through the worst of recessions in many times, whereas other areas of the state it's less, and therefore there's sanitarians that aren't working as hard as somebody down in Fairfield County that can't keep up.
Oh,
So
Jim, that was quite a dig on you out there on the eastern part of the state. You gonna take that?
well, Jim's southeast though. That's
It's
still pretty
booming in the
big.
southeast.
I'm just teasing.
I'm just used to Fairfield County because that was historically always my territory. So, and it probably is arguably the most affluent area in Connecticut, I would say for sure.
And that was, I mean, I had an experience there that I would have loved. I overburdened a health district. Like me personally, we asked too much of them and they had to flex to meet our needs, which helped, they finally did and they got it done. And I appreciate that. But it might have been really good for them to be like, hey, the guy's up in Bethel, he's sitting on his hands. He hasn't hasn't had much to do. We're going to have him come to your test pits and he's available all next week. He has nothing going on next week. So we can bang them all out in 1 week, and that would be amazing, that kind of cooperation. But, so I think that this is a really strong point. And this last sentence, I will not walk that back one bit if somebody asks me about it. Developers are likely to accept higher fees in exchange for improved timely service. If you said, oh yeah, it's gonna be $500, but I'll get it to you in 45 days. Or if you said, it's gonna be $5,000, but I'll have it to you next week. I'm writing a check. And it's important for time is money. All right, so then the last one is the impact of failing on-site water systems on surface water quality. I incorporated a lot of Jim's comments here. He had the most comments. We I think, have a lot of discovery to do on this. I think that this is a nice thing to put in here because, when we talk about contamination, a lot of contamination probably coming from these failed systems, and this could create an avenue to help mitigate that. Just like in home building, you can change the electrical and energy code and you're going to get this much improvement in the next house that I build. But if we can address it in the existing houses out there and find a way to increase their efficiency, we're going to have that much improvement. So, I think this is a good thing. We need to vet it out a little bit more. If everybody can kind of read through it, give me a list of their questions that we need more information on. I think we include those questions in our recommendations. So we're basically saying, we understand that, we don't know how many situations this is. We don't know how big the fund needs to be, but we think that this is an adequate, a worthwhile venture. I will put out this plug because I know that this made some people at DPH nervous. This would not be a DPH program or a DEEP program, but rather an agency with similar programs in place. So something along the line of I don't know, chaff or like housing or one of those groups that are typically in charge of grants to homeowners and that type of stuff. So Matt, you wouldn't have to underwrite loans all of a sudden.
Yeah. Well, I just have a couple comments here. One thing you could add here too is, and it's been posted in some of the other committees that I'm on, is a statewide database. So a statewide database to allow tracking of individual systems, and then they can pinpoint perhaps issues with a particular product and or let's say the site condition and things like that, so they can identify those and we can make corrective actions. So I think that would be a positive there. Now, just one thing to know. DPH has a drinking water section, and they actually have through sewage would be clean waters. They would be safe drinking water monies from the federal government. But at any rate, they have a state revolving program that they have money that the federal government gives that they loan out, to various water utilities to make corrections and repairs and things like that. So you could almost use that as a model.
Just to be clear, though, that has to go through individual water systems. So we're dealing with, the utilities or systems that serve. Yeah, I think adding, each individual homeowner's system adds a different level of front-end complexity rather than knowing the established water system
Yes.
that we already regulate.
Probably
and have a relationship with.
Absolutely. Yeah. But at least there's a process there of how they loan money out and things like that. But yeah, I would agree that it's going to have a whole nother level of complexity, because when dealing with homeowners versus, $1 million water company is significantly different. I got you.
Yeah.
Could say state revolving fund, perhaps. I don't know. Just throwing this out.
I don't know how well that would work as a model in practice, just because individual homeowners are so different than regulated, systems serving many, many, many homes. But,
right.
All right, so it's 11:03. To be kind to everybody's time, please grab this, beat it up, send it to me. I'll try to incorporate everybody's comments, and then I get it back out to everybody again, and we'll just get one step closer to where we need to be. And we'll go from there.
Yeah,
and I'll
Matt,
have an update. Go ahead, Bob.
Before we get out of here, I think we should try to wrap this thing up at our next call next week, because the following week, if we get the recommendations from the other group, our 5 recommendations today will be or next week will be pretty well done, other than some wordsmithing, in my opinion. I think we're pretty close on these things. But we could get hit with 5 or 10 more issues that we're going to need to address within 5 days, which could really bury us. So we need to have this thing kind of wrapped up, I think, at our next call.
So as you're enjoying your new year party, just think, I should probably spend a little more time focusing on septic.
But yeah, that's the goal. If we can have a decent sort of working, shareable draft, I think that's plenty. So thank you in advance for everyone's review.
Oh, yeah, beat it up. I'll do my best to capture everybody's comments. Adam, hopefully I did better on this one of capturing, not only, one side of the story, but the discussion actually captures the discussion. That was my goal.
Great work, everyone. Thanks for everybody's time.
Thank you, Matt.
Happy
So long, everyone.
New Year.
Yes.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. See you next year.